Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. This week we want to look at 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 1 through 17, and other verses to support that. One day, King David was sitting in his palace and saw the tent where God's ark was housed. He had a thought: the king of Israel lives in a beautiful house made of cedar. But the ark of God, which symbolizes the presence of God, was in a tent. And to David, this seemed backwards, and he wanted to fix that. So he visits Nathan, the prophet, and shares his idea. And Nathan said, "That sounds great. Go do it." But that night, God corrected Nathan. God said it was not because David's idea was bad. He explained that he had been with his people in a tent since the time of Moses, and he never asked anyone to change it. Now, David had a good desire, but he was not the right person. So God said, "No, not you, David." And this was hard for David. He was not being selfish. He was trying to do the right thing for the right reason. To honor God and to worship Him properly. But even then, God said no. One person explains it like this: wanting to build a temple was a good idea. David noticed something important. The tent did not seem good enough, and someone should build something better. And David was right. But he was not the right person to do it. Sometimes the hardest thing is when you are right about something, but it is not your job to do it. In Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11, that many of you are familiar with, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." This is a very, very famous verse. Many people know this verse. But I think people often misunderstand it. Some people think it means that God will make all your plans work out the way you want. But that is not what it says, does it? Just read it carefully. God was not talking to people who had, God was talking to people who had lost all of their plans because they're in an exile. They were far from home, living in a place they did not choose. Their plans had already failed. God was not saying their plans would succeed. He was saying that His plans for them were still going on, even when theirs were not. The verse is not about your plans, nor is it about my plan. It is about God's plans. And the word house can mean two things. It can mean a building, like where you live, but it can also mean a family line, a legacy that continues. David wanted to build God a building. But you know what God did? God gave David something bigger. God promised that someone from David's family would be a king forever. David was thinking about wood and stone. God was thinking about a forever kingdom. Later, David's son Solomon built a temple, but something even greater was coming through David's family. And you know that his name is Jesus. He did not need a building. God was with people through him. David wanted to give God a home. God gave David a son. Some people are facing a closed door right now. Maybe it's you. You had a plan that felt right, but it did not work. And that's painful, right? Especially when you do not know why. Some people are still holding on to old plans, hoping the door will open someday. Others have been told no so many times, they just stop hoping at all. Understandable. But God still wants you to trust that He is working, even if you cannot see it yet. When God told David no, He was actually working on something much larger. Jesus came from David's family, just like God promised. Jesus made a way for people to be close to God, not through a building, but through Him. David could not see any of that. He just saw a problem and wanted to fix it. God's plans are not just better versions of our plans. They are completely different. And we usually cannot see them at first. David wanted to build a house for God, but God chose to build something far greater through David's life. God was not rejecting David's desire. In fact, God was redirecting it into something eternal. He promised that David's throne would be established forever, a promise fulfilled in Jesus Christ. You see, often it is only in hindsight that we begin to see what God was doing all along. His no is never empty. It is always serving a greater purpose. Jesus himself prayed. Do you remember that? Jesus himself prayed that the cup will be taken from him. Yet the Father kept saying no. And through that no, the way to God was open for us. So my friends, when a door closes, it is not the end of the story. It may be the beginning of something far greater than you can see. So this morning, I want to just implore and plead, trust God. He knows exactly what he's doing. Wherever you are, may you have an amazing day, and may the Lord continue to pour himself into you. And even when the answer comes as a no, may you trust in God, who always, always brings good out of those who love him and who are called by his purpose. I'll see you on Wednesday.